Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here to answer the question as to why we are still in Washington State. Why would we stay here with everything that's been going on? This actually goes back to a video that came out where I was talking about the 3 other pieces of property that we've acquired over the years on top of what we have right here, which is just a shy 1/3 acre piece in a neighborhood in a very small town. And this right here is where we started everything. And it's still where we do all of our actual gardening, even though we do harvest some stuff from our other piece that's just down the road. So this is a shy 1/3 acre. The other piece just down the road, it's a very short drive, by half a mile, is a shy acre. And then the one down in Oregon is 2 acres. And then our biggest piece is 6 acres. And that's the one that's still here in Washington, but it's definitely more remote and harder to get to. And, you know, if need be, it can be our bug out place or just a fun place to have campouts when we get it all ready to go. Anyway, if you'd like to see that video where I go into more detail about what we're using all these different pieces of property for and why we have them, I'll link to that down below. But what happened in that was a couple of people came in and were just like, why would you live in Washington State? Or why wouldn't you buy property somewhere else? Or why do you have property in Oregon? Well, the Oregon property, I didn't go into that much detail about, but it's something that we just happen to come into. And we may keep it, we may not, but we have it. We've had it for a few years now. But the other 2 pieces, especially one right down the road, is one that we use actually quite frequently. And I go over what we're using it for in that video. So please go watch it if you'd like more information. But why on earth in Washington State? Why would we still be here? Well, some of this is also going to go back to another even more recent video that published about growing where you're planted or blooming where you're planted, however you want to word it. And I think too often we get in this mindset, which we did too for a short time, that, oh, we got to get out of Washington, we got to go to Missouri, or we got to go to Texas, or we got to go here, or we got to go there. But what I kept coming back to is like, okay, you got a lot of expense involved in moving. And especially once you're already somewhat established, it's really kind of hard to up and leave and start all over, especially in a place where the climate is completely different than what you've already adjusted yourself to. So there's that to consider. But the other thing is that we have family here. Family that we really don't want to leave, especially our kids and now our grandbabies. We have 2 grandkids. We have a 3rd one on the way. And to just up and leave means saying goodbye to all that and moving to any of these other states everybody keeps telling us we should go to. And I personally, more and more had became, even though, yes, housing prices are better in these places, property taxes are much better, some of your freedoms are much better. Here's one of the things I look at is that what we see happening on a grand scale, even though I try not to get into all the politics and conspiracies and all that, there's still stuff that we have to consider when we're looking at these things. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter where you go. It does not matter where you go. It does not matter where you buy your property. Nothing is going to be completely safe from the government spying on you through their satellites or whatever it is. Nothing is completely safe. I think taking the best measures you can to be as safe as possible and protect your privacy and protect yourself from zombie hordes is important. But you're going to have this no matter where you go. There's going to be other things that you're going to have to deal with. There's going to be other things that are difficult. It might be you can move to a place where property taxes are cheaper and being able to buy a homestead is more affordable. But what kind of money can you make in a place like that? Well, let's just take eggs, for example, selling eggs. So yes, we pay more in property taxes. We pay more in this, that, and the other thing. However, we can sell our eggs a lot more, for twice as much than what most people can sell them in these states that are a lot more affordable. So those places, you know, people might balk at $3 or $3.50 per dozen for some eggs, But here we can easily sell organic free range eggs for $6 and more. Not initially. I mean, obviously that's a lot of that's been because the price of everything's gone up, and people can go to the store and look at and see eggs that are not even organic for $7 for a dozen. And here, yet we're selling them for $6, and obviously we're going to get decent sales, and we can sell all the eggs we want to sell without having any issue with that. And we don't. And we've always got people ready to buy our eggs. So that's just a small example. But if you're working outside the home, typically wages are better in a place like this than in places that have lower housing. So typically the price you're getting paid per hour or your salary is also going to be based on the cost of living expenses in your area. So that's something to also consider. Well, I realize there's going to be things that vary and there's going to be differences. I'm just bringing up some examples. But for me as a grandparent and a mom, to up and leave everything we have here, all the work and time we've invested into getting ourselves set up here is not worth it, especially when it means I'm leaving my kids and my grandbabies behind. I find it personally more important than trying to get away from everything to put my time into helping my kids raise their children. And soon I'll be helping to homeschool them. And I would much rather put that there than worry about what my own personal future is. So to me, it is worth it to stay here in Washington. And I was born and raised in Washington State. I've never lived out of Washington State. Now, I didn't move to this area right here until I was 22, and now I'm 56. So I've lived most of my life here, but before that, I was living on the side of Washington State, which is way drier than here, completely different climate, like night and day. Some people don't realize that there are areas of Washington State that are more like desert and only get about 10 inches of rain per year, unlike our area that can get 120 to 160 inches of rain in a year. And that's something too. I've done a lot of work over there, and I'm still learning every year, which everybody should be. Adjusting to figuring out how to grow various things in all this rain. And obviously, yes, you learn to work with what naturally grows around you, like berries. Berries are great. Most berries do very, very well here. At least berries like blackberries and huckleberries and raspberries, those kind of berries love it here in our cooler, wet climate. And then things you assume wouldn't do well, we've managed to grow in this area. Not everything, but a lot of things. And there's plenty enough that we can grow here that we could do well off of. And so if we were to move to a different state, especially something like Texas, we're talking about really not just starting all over and having to rebuild everything we have, but having to learn all over again how to grow things and what's going to grow best for us there. And so what we've done here is learn to make the most of our area and learn to tap into the natural resources that are already here. So just like that other piece of property down the road, there was some of that we used to keep mowed down quite a bit. And now we've allowed certain places, we've allowed the blackberries that naturally grow wild but are excellent blackberries to fill in that area. So now we have easy access to blackberries, all the blackberries we want. And I love that. And we're talking about putting in some more fruit trees. There's already a couple of apple trees down there, but we're talking about either putting more fruit trees down there or out at the 6-acre piece outside of town. And you know, the kind of fruit that grows well here. And even though it's very wet here, our apples don't get as big as they did on the east of the mountains where I grew up in Wenatchee. But we still can get a lot of apples here, and pears do well too. So we focus on the things that can be perennial and that can do well. And so again, I'm going to link you back to that video, by the way, on growing where you're planted, because I think is super, super important to understand that. I think we get too caught up in, I have to move. I have to listen to this person and that person that says I need to get out of Washington or get out of Oregon or get out of wherever you are, California. And I understand that. I understand. But at the same time, if you look at the grand scheme of things, taking everything into consideration, I think for a lot of us, I'm not saying that everybody should stay where they're at. You got to follow what is best for you and your family. Now, for us, if maybe we had started doing this 20 to 30 years ago when our kids were babies or still young and at home, then we could have taken at least our small family and moved them with us. But we weren't really thinking along those lines back then. Plus, we do have other family. We have siblings around here. Patrick's siblings live here in Forks. And I have siblings that live here in Washington State and down in Oregon. So we're all still kind of closer, even the ones that are down in Oregon, or even his father that is down in Northern California. So we're all still kind of close. If we were to move away from here, we're moving away from all of our family virtually. And that would be tough. That would be very tough. While we have these close relationships with our family and we're trying to reach them and help them and teach them to kind of get along on the same lines, and that's much easier to do when you can be there with them in person and show them what you do, and maybe they can start seeing the benefits of what you do. And to me, that's more important. Yes, we should value our freedoms and we should fight for our freedoms. I think we also need to look at our day-to-day matters and taking care of not just ourselves, but those that we care about to the best of our abilities, and being there for them and to help them. And I decided I would much rather do that. It's far more important to me. And I love it here. I love this area. It was hard when I first moved here because I wasn't so used to the rain that we get. But I also see the benefits of all the rain that we get. Most of the time we can have pretty much unlimited water access because we collect rainwater and we get plenty. And that can carry us through the few dry months that we do get. And so many other things about this area. And I've really learned to appreciate these various things that are here now. Not that I wouldn't appreciate being in a drier climate again, but I like it here. I'm happy here. And here's the other thing that somebody else had asked a question under the Grow Where You Planted video. They're talking about moving and getting out of the house that they live in right now, and should she plant a garden or not plant a garden because they don't know when or if. Plant a garden. Plant a garden. Don't put it off just because you think you might move. I made that mistake years ago. There was a period of 19 months where Patrick was working over in the Seattle area, and which is about 4 hours from here, 4-hour drive. And we'd see him like every other weekend. And at the time, of course, we were thinking he was going to stay in that job until he retired. And so we were looking for property over there. And during that time, I just thought, well, I'm not even going to bother with the greenhouse, because we did have the greenhouse back then. We didn't have the gardens all around us like we do now, but we had the greenhouse mainly so I could grow tomatoes, because any tomatoes you get around here are totally flavorless. And growing your own is the best way to go, but you have to have a greenhouse. So I just let it go. Kept thinking that any time now we're going to get a place, we're going to be packing up and moving, why bother? Well, I really regretted doing that. I did that for 2 summers in a row, and it was it was shortly after that next summer that I realized that we're gonna end up staying here after all. And actually I was thrilled because I still had my dance school going, I still had the martial arts school going, and I didn't want to give that up either. So I really didn't want to move over to that area, to be honest, but I was thankful that it ended up working out that Patrick was able to get a job back here again, and we stayed here. But all the tomatoes I could have grown in those 2 years, what a waste. It was more of a waste to not grow the tomatoes than to go ahead and start them and then find out I had to up and leave. So don't put something off just because you think you might be moving. Unless you know for an absolute fact you're going to be up and out of there before you even have time to harvest anything, then yeah, I could see that. But even then, anything can happen, and I still think it's a good idea to put in a garden, especially if it's just throwing a few potatoes in the ground. Something that's easy to take care of, something you don't really even have to think about. You just plant it and let it grow, and if you get to harvest it, great. If you don't, then somebody else can. At least there's something there. So don't not do something just because you think you might move or you're planning on moving. So as long as I'm able, I'm going to keep putting food in the ground. I'm going to keep moving forward and doing what I can to take care of ourselves and our family. And if that means staying here in Washington State until the Lord takes us home, so be it. I'm fine with that. But if something comes up and we are called to move elsewhere, then we will follow that. There's always that thought in the back of our mind that maybe something will come up and we'll move out of the area. But for the time being, we've decided this is where we are supposed to be. And actually, you might be surprised, some of the new friends that we've made moved here because they felt called to this area, believe it or not. And other people have been moving out here for the very same reason. We don't really know why. They just knew they felt called to move to this area. So not everybody, even though everybody could fit in Texas, not everybody should. Not everybody should move there, or Missouri for that matter. Just like with Idaho, we were looking at that too. And everybody was moving to Idaho and buying property in Idaho, and what happened? Property prices just skyrocketed. And now it's difficult to find a piece of property out there that you can afford unless you decide to move way up into the mountains where it's snow most of the time. So no, we decided we didn't want to do that either. So anyway, we still look every now and then just for the heck of it, because you just never know. We try to keep our options open, but for now, this is where we are, and we're going to keep making the most of it. We're going to keep growing and keep blooming right here where we're planted, even if it means expanding out to some of the other pieces of property we already own, or even buy more if we see another good deal come up. And oh yes, and here's the other thing. Shortly after we got that 6-acre piece, we were already getting offers for more than what we paid for it. So if we had to, we know we could turn around and sell it and get our money back out of it and put it into something else if we needed to. So if nothing else, it's an investment that we can get back again easily enough, rather than money sitting in the bank that could just be gone just like that. Because it's not really money in the bank, it's just digital, and that's all it is. It's just numbers in a computer is all it is, and that can all be wiped out. I mean, if you're looking at buying property as an investment or possibly moving on to it, don't be shy about it, but don't feel pressured into it because this channel or that channel or this person or another person or this person who wrote a book on the best places to move to says this is what you should do. You should do what's right for you and your family, not what anybody else says. Because nobody else is going to understand your situation the way you do. So it comes down to you, your spouse, and your family. One is the best all the way around. Don't feel like you have to please some other channel or some other person that's already doing these things, or that you have to fit in. I think that's part of the problem too, is some people feel like, oh, I got to move to Missouri because that's what everybody's saying, and I want to fit in and be like everybody else, or whatever the state is that people are saying. No, you don't. You don't. It's just like anything else, just like a diet or anything else. You do what's best for you and don't feel guilty about it, and make the most out of the gifts that you have right now. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to check out the videos I'll be linking to down below for more information on our property and about growing where you're planted and so on and so forth, whatever else I decide to put in there, if I do. And if you need to contact me, email address is always in the description box down below, raincountryhomestead@gmail.com. And please also share in comments down below, what are some things that you've been through? Have you felt like you had to move and then decided to make the most of where you're at, found it was best to stay where you're at, just regardless of the cost of living expenses and the different policies that got put in place, and you still found it best to stay right where you are? Or if you found it best to move elsewhere and make the most of it somewhere else. I mean, go ahead and share your experiences down below, but mostly this was to share our own experience, and also to encourage people to not feel pressured into doing something they don't feel is right for them just because other people are doing it. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.